we'll get a bunch from people. So thanks. You on somewhere? Do you have to unmute him, Christine?
I
or could he
saw
unmute?
him. Oh, let me see if he's here still.
Did we lose him?
No, hold on just a second. Yeah, I know he's having, oh, he's still here.
Oh,
I know he's having internet connection issues. Oh, there he is. Hi, Rick. Let me unmute him. All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
My wife decided to do her workout from home and she's streaming Orange Theory and it screwed up our internet this morning. So,
Well, gotta stay fit, especially working
Yeah.
from home. So I'm glad she was able to do it. Welcome.
Thank you.
So like Neil said, if you can just give a real brief overview. We had an amazing June, and I know there's a lot of new members who haven't gotten to watch your previous trainings yet and things like that. So maybe 5 or 10 minutes about what this product is and how it can help. And then I know we have just some questions if we can ask. And then if anyone in the comments, I know usually we like to chatter and things like that, but if we can keep the comments for just questions for Rick towards the end, I think that'll help as we dive through them at the end of the call.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry I had missed the intro part because I was bouncing in and out of the meeting.
No,
And the
that's
first time
okay.
I joined, even the first time I joined, the name was wrong. It said Liz Deitch. I had my wife's name on my screen, so I had to log out.
You don't look like a Liz.
Okay, so I usually like to start by letting people know that they are toxic. I can't tell you how many people I talk to that think that they're pure or pristine or they live in the right place in the country or the right place in the world. But the fact is there's no place on the planet Earth where you're free of toxic exposure through the water, the air, the food. In fact, there's scientists that have taken deep ice cores in Antarctica and found man-made pollutants in that ice. So wherever the wind blows, wherever the water flows, toxins are everywhere, and they're getting into our bodies, and they're increasing what we call our body burden, which is sequestered toxins in our body, in the bone, in the muscle, in the in tissues throughout our body. And so we want to do something actively to detoxify. Certainly you can mitigate the risk of exposure. You could try and lead a cleaner lifestyle. I talk about simple things like if you ever get dry cleaning chemicals are highly toxic. They're volatile organic compounds. And what do? We take our dry cleaning wrapped in a bag and we hang them in our closet. And then when our dry cleaning, we rip open the plastic inside our closet, trapping all those volatile organic compounds and breathing them in and maximizing our exposure. So if you did something simple, like take your dry cleaning outside, when you open it and let it air out outside, you cut your exposure by more than 90%. So there's little things we can do to reduce our exposure and mitigate the risk of toxic exposure. But aside from that, all of us are toxic and we get these toxins in our body. So how do we get rid of them? And there's lots and lots of ways to get rid of toxins. Primarily, we take things that are laxatives or diuretics, senna-based teas, for example, dandelion tea, and it makes you go to the bathroom. So if you go to the bathroom, you're losing a lot of toxins. The problem is there's side effects associated with that, usually dehydration. In the case of senna-based or laxative teas, they're actually, you have dependence on those, where your body gets used to them and you can't properly eliminate without them. And so these are specific issues to most of those concepts. I came across zeolites in the 90s with the concept that we could actually systemically detoxify toxic heavy metals and volatile organic compounds purposely from our body. And so I came across the concept of zeolites. And first of all, what is a zeolite? Zeolites are naturally occurring minerals. They're formed of volcanic eruptions. When a volcano erupts, the lava and the ash goes into water, primarily salt water, and through high temperature and high pressure, form these cage-like minerals. If you saw them under a microscope, they actually look like a cage, like a honeycomb. And it has a lot of space inside the cage, which is fascinating. In fact, the first zeolites were discovered because someone took this powder, this basically crushed powder, and heated it up and it boiled. Water came out. He goes, how did water come out of powder? And he called it zeolite, which literally means boiling rock or boiling ash. And the reason water comes out is because there's so much space inside the zeolite, it holds on to things, including water. Zeolites are also negatively charged, one of the few negatively charged minerals found in nature. So because of this cage-like structure and this negative charge, zeolites have the ability to draw to themselves and trap within themselves a variety of different things. We use a zeolite called clinoptilolite, and clinoptilolite is naturally occurring. It's one of the most prevalent zeolites found on the planet, and there's 49 different naturally occurring zeolites. So clinoptilolite is just one of 49. And they're differentiated based on their structure, how their molecular atoms are put together, and the pore sizes and the space inside. That differentiates the different types of zeolites. But clinoptilolite is highly abundant. But the coolest thing about clinoptilolite is because of its charge differentiation, and because of the shape and structure of its pores, it can differentiate bad from good. It likes small, highly charged metals. It doesn't like larger, lower charged metals. And it just so happens that all things that are bad for us, like mercury and lead and tin and bismuth and antimony and cadmium, tend to be smaller with a higher charge. And all things that are good for us, like calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, sodium, potassium, tend to be larger with a lower charge. So this zeolite is so good at taking out the bad and leaving the good. Okay. As I said, I started working zeolites in the mid 90s, and there was a product that was on the market in the early 70s called Zetox, which was a zeolite for detoxification. It was pulled off the market because the FDA studied it and looked at it and found that it had lots of mercury in it. And so they said, well, this can't be good. It's got all this mercury in it. And then is when they were first pulling mercury-based products off the market. If you guys remember, mercurochrome was an antibacterial that was a topical mercury product. So the FDA was actively trying to take mercury-based drugs off the market. And so they took that off the market. And as I looked more and more into the history of the use of zeolites, I found out that there are two major issues with naturally occurring zeolites for human use in detoxification. The first issue is that it's too big. When you get the zeolite from the mine site, it's anywhere from 5 to 200 microns, kind of like a rough granular sand. And that's too big to be absorbed. So when you digest it, it's not getting out of the digestive tract. It's just going to be a digestive cleanser. So I said, if we want this to be a systemic detoxifier, we need to micronize it. We need to crush the zeolite cages to make them smaller and smaller and smaller so they can get into the bloodstream. So that's our first step, is micronization, which we have a proprietary process. We use high pressure and centrifugation to crush the zeolite cages over and over again. And understand, when we do this, we don't destroy the zeolite cage. The zeolite cage is incredibly stable. It's stable up to temperatures over 900 degrees. It is amphoteric, so it exists just as well in acid as base. You can't really destroy a zeolite cage. What we're doing is crushing the cages to be smaller cages. And the example I use is a diamond. If you take a diamond and you crush the diamond, you get diamond dust. But every single speck of diamond dust is still a diamond. It's just a very, very small diamond and has all the properties of that big diamond. It's just a smaller version. And that's what we do with the zeolite. We make tiny cages that can get into the body, submicron cages, so it can be absorbed in the digestive tract, travel over the body, and pull out toxins. So the second issue with naturally occurring zeolites is that they're full. They like toxins. And so in the environment, in the mine site, when air blows through them and water flows over them, they're sucking all these toxins out from the environment. And so we get it from the mine site. It already has toxins and heavy metals and volatile organic compounds in the zeolite. And every other company out there that's not doing an activation process, that's in the product. They have all these toxins in the product. Now, I'm not saying they're dangerous, because clinoptilolite has been used for over 800 years in traditional medicine. In fact, there's societies in Asia called geophasics, clay eaters, that have been eating this stuff for 800 years. So I'm not saying it's dangerous from nature, but it's not that effective. If it's already full, if the cage is already full, how much more can you put in it? You know? And so I have a proprietary activation process. It took us 6 years to perfect, that basically exchanges out all the toxins, all the heavy metals, cleans out the cage so it's at its most active. It can absorb the most amount of toxins from the body. And that's really what differentiates my zeolite from everyone else out there. Also, I got to mention, I was the first. You know, no one really had zeolites for systemic detoxification before I launched my first product in 2005. Since then, there have been dozens and dozens of low-level knockoff competitors. And it's funny because they all use my marketing material. They use the stuff I created in 2005, 2006. They use my published studies to support their products and then say they're better than me, or they're better than the products I've created, which is absolutely ridiculous. They really don't understand the concept. And I'll talk about, there's one competitor that everyone keeps asking me about that I never even heard of until we launched Daily Detox Plus, but I'll talk about that in a few minutes. So that's what really our micronization activation process is, what differentiates Daily Detox Plus from everybody else. It's a proprietary process. I was in a lawsuit 2 years ago where I sued a company for trade secret infringement. and I won. I got an injunction against that company, and the federal judge found in her order that my stuff was a protectable proprietary trade secret that yielded a valuable product. And so that's really important to understand. No one else has this. No one else understands what I do. It's a lot of chemistry and a lot of labor that goes into the production of Daily Detox Plus. Okay, so what does it do? It loves heavy metals. You start using it, it's going to take out mercury and lead and cadmium and arsenic and tin and bismuth, aluminum and antimony. Those are the top 8 heavy metals that we've measured. It's also incredibly good at pulling out volatile organic compounds like benzene, toluene, dioxane, all the phthalates, all the furans. It's great at sandwiching those volatile organic compounds and pulling them out. All of those compounds are potentially carcinogenic. Now, the downstream implication of that is you're healthier. When you take all the stuff out of your body, a cleaner, healthier body fixes itself. And we have tens of thousands of testimonials that talk about everything, how much healthier everyone feels. And when we did paper and pencil testing in our clinical trials, and we just asked people to define how they felt, across the board, people said they had more energy during the day, they were sleeping better at night, they had improved cognitive function, they were thinking more clearly, and a lot of people had improved visual acuity, their eyesight got better. And we actually struggled with that one, and the consensus in the medical advisory panel was that if we're taking pressure off the liver, because the liver now, we're detoxifying the body, so the liver has less to do, the liver can do its other functions. And one of the functions of the liver is the production of glutathione. Glutathione is the primary antioxidant in the eye that actually helps keep the eye healthy. So the theory is, with improved liver function, you have improved visual acuity because you have upregulation of glutathione production. So that's just one of the downstream implications of a cleaner, healthier body. And when you hear these testimonies, I warn people, when you hear these testimonials, sometimes they sound ridiculous or fantastic. It just seems like too much. You have a panacea. I'm telling you, the underlying common denominator in every one of these testimonials is a cleaner, healthier body fixes itself. Understand that. You're cleaning out all the gunk. You're taking things out of the body that don't belong there. And the body now can do what it's supposed to do, which is function at its peak and clean and function. Metabolic function happens unimpeded. So I don't know if I hit.
So Rick, I just have one question for you, and then people are starting to send some questions in on the chats. One of the biggest issues that you and I have faced, and we get questions about all the time, is contraindications and reactions with pharmaceuticals. And I know there's certain things we always want to talk to the doctor about, but I think it'd be great if you could go over why this is healthy for everybody in terms of the pharmaceuticals.
So the one major issue or potential side effect of the product is a potential for low-level dehydration. And the reason for this is the body holds on to water based on the aggregate charges through the body, the positive and negative charges. So when you talk about electrolytes, all electrolytes are positively charged minerals. Now the healthy electrolytes are magnesium and potassium and sodium and things like that, calcium. But believe it or not, heavy metals also function as electrolytes, mercury and lead and things like that in the body. So when you rid yourself of those heavy metals, you're actually lowering the aggregate charges in the body, and it can lead to dehydration. You can lose water. So that's important that you drink plenty of water while you're detoxing, and you can replace some of those unhealthy electrolytes with healthy electrolytes like magnesium and calcium. And we do that with Restore and with other mineral products. So that's important. So the one real side effect, if people say, I took the product and I had a headache, or I took the product and I had muscle cramping, well, that is dehydration. Okay, so just you drink more water, make sure you're getting a good electrolyte source to maintain those electrolytes in the body. So that's the main issue. When it comes to contraindications, to understand the zeolite itself is incredibly passive. It doesn't have an active mechanism of action. It doesn't go in and rip things out of tissue, or like people ask about if they have a hip transplant, like they have an artificial hip or an artificial joint, is it going to rip this metal off the artificial joint? No, it doesn't do that. It's very passive. It floats around the bloodstream and the lymphatic system, and it basically, if it comes into contact with something it likes, it migrates it into the cage and gets trapped within the cage. That's what it does. It's very, very passive. And so because of that, there's very little potential interaction with medications. In fact, the only thing I really warn against are metal-containing drugs, primarily heavy metal containing drugs, which would include chemotherapies. So if you're on chemotherapy that's platinum based, like cisplatin or carboplatin, I wouldn't take the product within a few days before chemo and a few days after chemo, because it will pull the platinum out and invalidate the chemotherapy. You want that chemo to work. You don't take it on those days. Otherwise, we have looked at some other metal therapies like lithium, for example. And lithium is really a very small atom with a very low charge, it's a +1 charge. So we've seen people on lithium use the zeolite without any issues. Okay, so I do say also always consult your physician if you're on a prescription, if you have a medical condition, consult your physician. But in our trials and in our clinical experience, we haven't seen an issue with this product and with people using lithium. But that would be the only issue, is a heavy metal or metal containing product with the Daily Detox Plus.
Cool. It's interesting. I have one gentleman that came into the business, and he has a grandson who has cerebral palsy and ADHD, and has some amazing results with that. I assume that you would concur that he should continue to take that product.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and that's really where we talk about what heavy metals do more than what the Daily Detox Plus does. Heavy metals compete with the good metals. And when they do, they block metalloenzymes, metalloproteins that do natural metabolic processes in the body. So I give two examples in my normal webinar, my normal speeches. I talk about ATP. ATP is adenosine triphosphate, which is the energy currency of the body. When your body needs to do something, it spends ATP to do it. Now, what stabilizes an ATP molecule is magnesium. So the ATP molecule is highly negative. Magnesium has a +2 charge. It binds to the end of the ATP, and active ATP is called magnesium ATP or MgATP. The problem is magnesium can be displaced primarily by mercury. So if you have mercury poisoning, the mercury can displace magnesium, invalidate or inactivate the ATP, and then you don't have that energy to use in the body. You have less energy. And to do anything, to do any metabolic process. So as you remove that mercury, ATP now can become active and everything works better. Anything you need to spend energy to do works better because now you have more active ATP in the body. Another example is zinc finger proteins. And I have a picture of that in my main webinar that I did a few months ago, and I've done it on stage. So zinc finger proteins are a family of proteins in the body, and they're called zinc finger proteins because there's a single zinc atom in the center of the protein that holds the shape of the protein. And zinc finger proteins are necessary for cellular division. They actually go in and help copy DNA when you're making new cells. So this is important when you have a cut, a scrape, a broken bone, and you need to repair your body. But it's also important when you have an infection or a cold and you need to make more white blood cells. Zinc finger proteins come in and help replicate those cells. This is one of the reasons that you might suck on a zinc lozenge or take a zinc supplement when you have a cold. More zinc finger proteins, more white blood cells. So it's a pretty simple equation. So what happens in this case? So zinc can be displaced from zinc finger proteins primarily by lead. So even low-level lead poisoning, lead can get into the zinc finger protein and inactivate it. So what happens when you have lead poisoning? You have thinner skin, you feel sick or you get sick more easily, you have a weakened immune system. All of that is because the zinc finger proteins aren't working. So what happens when you remove the lead from the body? Or I say when you get the lead out. For older people who used to say things like get the lead out. So when you get the lead out, zinc now can get into its binding site in zinc finger proteins and make them work. And that's an interesting mechanism too. The reason that lead inactivates the zinc finger protein is lead is smaller than zinc, and it changes the shape of the protein. So when it changes the shape of the protein, it inactivates. It no longer fits its binding site, so it won't work. So when you get the lead out and get zinc in the body, now the zinc finger proteins work. So you're going to heal faster. You're going to have a stronger immune response, a stronger immune system, a more stable immune system. So that's the example of competition. Okay. So I try to tell people that the biggest issue with anything that's wrong with them could simply be because heavy metals have now down-regulated metalloenzymes and metalloproteins. When you get those out, everything starts to work better. So when you talk about things that might seem unrelated, like ADHD and autism and things like that, it's really now everything starts to work better, and you see a downstream recovery. You see a downstream implication of detoxification.
Rick, would it be easier if I just picked and chose a little bit of the questions because we got so many? Chrissy, is it okay if we go over? Because we're already at our half
Yeah,
hour.
no, we
Oh,
can definitely go over. And a lot
Okay.
of the things too, I wanted to encourage everyone, there are other videos. So if you are new or you haven't seen Rick's other presentations, please get back with the person that got you started here in NAVAN or whatnot, because he definitely goes into a lot more information. I know he's touching on a few things, like he just talked about metal prosthesis and things of that nature. Same kind of thing with metal fillings I get often. It's not going to break these things apart and pull them out like he was mentioning, just anything that's leaching your body. All right, so yeah, Rick, if you want to maybe pick some of these, or I don't think there's too many. Or Neil.
Okay, Neil, why don't you start RIK so I don't have to.
Okay, all right. The first one was, please explain a biofilm and how detox works against it.
So biofilms are formed by bacteria, and believe it or not, there's healthy biofilms and unhealthy biofilms because there's healthy bacteria and unhealthy bacteria. But for the most part, when we talk about biofilms, we're talking about a negative response. The zeolite itself is not going to break apart or destroy biofilms, but one of the effects of the zeolite is regulating pH in the body. So when you talk about pH, the pH scale runs from 0 to 14. 7 is neutral, 7 is pure water. When you get lower than 7, between 0 and 7, it's acidic, which means you have more protons, or H+, than you have hydroxyls, OH-. So the fact is that's acidic, is lower than 7. Above 7 is alkaline. The physiologic pH is 7.4, slightly alkaline. At 7.4, everything works better in our bodies. Our enzymes fold properly, our proteins fold properly, everything functions well in our bodies. It's also, when we're slightly alkaline, bacteria doesn't grow well, viruses don't grow well, cancer can't grow at all. Cancer requires an acidic environment to grow, to replicate. So when you're in an alkaline pH, everything works better and the bad things can't propagate. Same thing with biofilms. So as the zeolite has several mechanisms by which it balances pH. Primarily, a lot of these toxins function as what's known as Lewis acids in the body. So when you remove these toxins, that lowers acidity regardless. The other thing is that acid is caused by protons, positively charged hydrogen ions, and you have excess protons. Now, those protons are positively charged and they're small particles, so they will move into and out of the zeolite cage, but they don't have a high affinity for the zeolite, so they're not going to get stuck inside. So I call it a geographic buffering agent. As the zeolite is traveling through the body and it gets to an area of high acidity, those protons are going to migrate into the zeolite cage and, in essence, raise the alkalinity, raise the pH of that area. And then as the zeolite travels to areas with less protons in it, they're going to be removed or released from the cage. So it buffers or balances pH throughout the body in that fashion. So we do know it's an alkalizing agent because of that. And when the body becomes more alkaline, it becomes an inhospitable environment for the growth of these biofilms, for the growth of bacteria, growth of viruses, and even the growth of cancer.
Okay, next question. As far as neurological diseases like Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, are there any mechanisms of action that could be beneficial?
So those are wildly different. Okay, so Alzheimer's is neurofibrillary tangles, and we do know that aluminum, if it doesn't cause Alzheimer's, it's contributory to Alzheimer's. And aluminum is found in the neurofibrillary tangles of Alzheimer's patients. And we have found in clinical trials that the zeolite removes aluminum. Okay, so it does pull aluminum out of the body, which could be beneficial for Alzheimer's patients. So that's important. Understand also, when we talk about body burden and sequestration of toxins, one of the places that toxins tend to sequester is the fatty sheaths, the myelin sheaths around nerves that can cause neurologic damage over time, especially aluminum and mercury. And so as we remove those volatile organic compounds and heavy metals that can cause nerve damage, we can improve neurologic syndromes, neurologic symptomatology. Parkinson's is completely different. Parkinson's is caused by destruction of part of the brain called the substantia nigra. And there's nothing that we can do with the zeolite that's going to rebuild the substantia nigra. In fact, the one shining hope of Parkinson's disease is stem cell research, because stem cells could, in fact, over time, regrow that part of the brain. So that is the hope of Parkinson's. In the meantime, there is a belief that there's several types of Parkinson's disease, several mechanisms that lead to the destruction of the substantia nigra. And when you see young Parkinson's disease or early onset Parkinson's, it's almost always associated with heavy metal poisoning. So we do believe that getting rid of heavy metals, especially in age-related or young Parkinson's patients, we can see a slowing of the forward progression or even halting the forward progression of the condition. even though we're not going to rebuild that part of the brain and reverse it.
I'm going to combine two questions because they sort of they came after each other and they're pretty much the same. It's how does it remove toxins like mold and other toxins that are not heavy metals? And the next one is about fungus overgrowth. So, can you talk a little about that?
So first, things that aren't heavy metals, like volatile organic compounds they talk about all the time, it does, the zeolite does directly remove volatile organic compounds. And it doesn't do it like it does heavy metals. Heavy metals are pulled inside the cage and trapped within the cage with points of coordination deep within the cage. Volatile organic compounds are way too big to fit inside the pores of the cage, but they're flat compounds. These benzene rings, toluene, furans, these flat compounds are incredibly dangerous in the body because of their flat nature, their flat structure. They can actually intercalate or slide in between the turns of DNA and get stuck in the DNA helix, which causes cancer. You know, it damages the DNA and can cause cancer. But because they're flat, they can lay on the surface of the cage, the zeolite cage, and get trapped when another cage comes to the other side of it and sandwiches those toxins, the volatile organic compounds. And so we know that a lot of volatile organic compounds are trapped by the zeolite. I know that because when I get the zeolite from the mine site, it's full of volatile organic compounds. We have to clean that out. And we clean that out as part of our process. So we know that zeolite is really, really, really good at pulling out volatile organic compounds. But when you talk about things like molds and fungus and even bacteria and viruses, it's really a function of the downstream implications of a cleaner, healthier body and a higher pH. It's just the body cleaning itself out. And I said this before, as the pH comes up, it becomes an inhospitable environment for the growth of bacteria, viruses, molds, yeast, spores, things like that. One of the things you might see, and this is one of the negatives you might see when you use the product, is that if you have a systemic candidiasis infection, you have a yeast infection, and you take the zeolite, you might actually wind up with a vaginal yeast infection or oral thrush. And the reason for that is that now the yeast has no place to live in your body. It's an inhospitable environment. So it's looking for any place left to live. And the only place left that has an acidic pH is going to be the vaginal tract and the mouth. And so you can see this happen, and people say, well, I started using your product and I got a vaginal yeast infection. Well, that's actually a good thing. That's saying this yeast is getting out of your body. And you can treat it like you treat any other vaginal yeast infection, continue to take the zeolite. And same thing with oral thrush. You can get nystatin or something to get rid of it. But that is a good sign, meaning you're getting rid of the systemic infection.
Okay, we're going to continue with Try to Stump Rick. Did you say it helps in the production of glutathione? And do you happen to know to what percentage the body unregulates glutathione?
Unregulates?
I don't quite understand it. There's a company out there that states their product endogenously increases by 300%. Is there a reason why we were on that?
Well, okay, so it's actually really easy to up glutathione production, even if you just take selenium. Selenium is a cofactor in glutathione glutathione production, which is the enzyme that produces glutathione, okay, glutathione peroxidase. So when you produce glutathione in the liver, you need selenium as a cofactor. So even if you just take a vitamin with selenium in it, you're going to up-regulate production of glutathione 200, 300, 400%. So that's a pretty easy claim to make, endogenous production of glutathione. The real thing is liver health. Is the liver going to make that enzyme? You know, glutathione peroxidase and glutathione hydroxidase. Those enzymes need to be produced by a healthy liver. And if the liver is too busy doing other things, it's not going to make a lot of glutathione. And understand this, your eyes are the only living cells that see the outside world, that come in contact with the outside world. And because of that, because of the air, because of light, it creates a lot of free radicals. And so you constantly need antioxidants in the eye to maintain eye function and eye integrity. And so that's why your body makes glutathione as an antioxidant and beta carotene, which leads to vitamin A, to help with eye health and eyesight. So yes, you need the glutathione. But I would argue that you can't take glutathione exogenously. You can't take glutathione as a supplement because it's very labile and breaks down in the digestive tract. So your best bet is to endogenously increase the production of glutathione in the liver. And you can do that with Daily Detox Plus, which takes effort off the liver and allows the liver to function more effectively, but also by taking any kind of mineral supplement that contains selenium. You want to try to get at least 200 to 300 micrograms of selenium a day to improve overall liver function and production of glutathione.
Great. Can you get sick if you don't drink enough water and are doing the detox? We talked a little bit about that. And then the other question is, any recommendations for lowering dose of detox if people have a hard time drinking water?
All right. So, first of all, will you get sick if you don't drink enough water? So sick is a very open term. Okay. I said one of the things that can happen when you're detoxing with Daily Detox Plus is dehydration because of loss of electrolytes. And so when those symptoms tend to be headache, in fact, headache, the number one cause of headaches is dehydration. Muscle cramping, a 1% loss in liquid in the body, loss of water in the body, leads to a 12% loss in muscle function. Okay, so even a little bit of loss of water can cause cramping and loss of muscle function. So you need to make sure that you drink plenty of water. When they say sick, I more think about what we call dumping crisis or wasting crisis. And this happens when you detox quickly. Okay, so when people do chelation therapy, for example, or they do plasmapheresis, where they're pulling out toxins very quickly, what happens is sequestered toxins in the bone and the muscle and the fat get dumped into the bloodstream, into the lymph very quickly, and that causes all sorts of negative side effects, flu-like symptoms, chronic fatigue, nausea, headaches, all this stuff. And a lot of people, they call that a wasting crisis or a dumping crisis, and they're used to it. They say when they do a detox cleanse, you're going to feel like this. They expect to feel like that, which is why the Daily Detox Plus is so amazing, because that usually doesn't happen. In 99.9% of the cases, it's very passive and very consistent, and so you don't have these dumping crises. But there are people that are highly toxic when they start using the Daily Detox Plus. They might get one of these dumping crises. In that case, I recommend drinking more water, try and get those things out of the body, wash them out quickly. The other option is to greatly reduce your use of the Daily Detox Plus. Instead of 10 drops 3 times a day, try 1 or 2 drops once or twice a day. Start slowly, drinking plenty of water, and work your way up. And that way you'll detox more slowly, but you won't have those issues. Okay?
So maybe we could segue into a little bit, answer a number of the different questions. What is your recommendation of the way people should use the detox when they first start off and on a continuing basis? And for the person who asks, yes, you have to take this forever.
Okay, so so for use, we recommend 10 drops 3 times a day. I think that's a nice solid dose. I've never recommended using 15 drops or more at a time, only because it's passively absorbed. And when you use more than 15 drops at any one time, some of it is not going to be absorbed. It's just going to stay in the digestive tract. Now, that's not a bad thing. It's not wasted, because you do have toxins in the digestive tract, and it's going to help with digestive cleansing. But if you want to get the most bang for your buck and the most absorption, you don't want to take more than 15 drops at a time. So people who are maximizing their dosage are taking 10 to 15 drops every few hours throughout the day and getting a really massive dose. But I do recommend 10 drops 3 times a day with plenty of water for the average detox. Now, how long do you have to take it? Well, when I do this live, I ask for a show of hands. How many people here drink? How many people eat? How many people breathe? You know, so if you're eating, drinking, and breathing, you have toxic exposure on a daily basis. Okay, my next question is, how many people won't raise their hand no matter what I say? So the fact is, if you're eating, drinking, or breathing, you have toxic exposure on a daily basis. You should keep taking the Daily Detox Plus to reduce that body burden.
Is it okay to take while undergoing immunotherapy?
Okay, what kind of immunotherapy? So are they in cancer treatments where they're getting stem cell injections, or getting injections?
Cancer treatments.
Yeah, I would say yes, you know, as long as they don't have it concomitant with cisplatin or carboplatin, which they can do concomitant chemotherapy with immunotherapy. If they're just doing immunotherapy, I would argue the Daily Detox Plus as an adjunct to treatment would actually be incredible. It would reduce side effects and probably improve results.
You've mentioned previously that you can experience another toxin dump at about 3 weeks after starting detox. Does that happen every 3 weeks?
Okay, I didn't say you experience another toxic dump. Okay, for people that don't understand the chemistry of the zeolite, you have to understand the zeolite has what they call an affinity scale. It likes things more than other things. Okay, so for example, it likes mercury more than arsenic. Okay, it likes arsenic more than lead, and I have the reactivity series on my presentation that shows what it likes more. And the fascinating thing for us is when we did the coal miner studies, we did coal miners from West Virginia. We studied them for 3 months. We took their urine samples every day for the first week and then weekly thereafter. We saw right away a big spike in mercury, right away. And the mercury levels came down over time, and we saw lead levels go up and arsenic levels go up. But right about 3 weeks, we saw mercury again. And the reason for that is that we took the mercury that was in circulation, we took that out right away. But there was still a lot of mercury that was sequestered. It was hidden in fat or in neurologic tissue. And then over time, as we remove circulating toxins, we create what we call a concentration gradient, because there's no toxin circulation, but there's a lot still sequestered or hidden in tissue. That tissue starts to release the toxins to balance the concentration gradient. And as it releases it, now suddenly we start seeing mercury again, because that's being released, and that's a high affinity toxin. And so it's not about seeing a spike in or a dump of, it's simply that over time we're reducing the body burden because the body's releasing what it has trapped.
Can those taking blood thinners such as warfarin use the detox?
Yeah, there's no contraindication with any blood thinners. It's not going to contribute to, it doesn't have any, we haven't seen no change in prothrombin time in patients using the product.
There's a number of people asking about specific diseases, and I would suggest that we just understand that this is not a product that's going to fix a disease. It's going to help your body let itself fix the disease. So I'm just going to add that to that, and because I don't think we need to go through each one of the diseases, if that's okay. Somebody wants to know how you clean zeolites, but that's how you make money, so you're not going to tell them, right?
We talk about heat and acid exchange, you know. So in essence, the first thing is simply heat. You know, we use ultra purified water, and we heat the zeolite, the micronized zeolite, in ultra purified water, and the heat drives off the volatile organic compounds. So that's the first thing that comes off, is we off gas. In fact, they're called volatile organic compounds because they're volatile. They turn into gas easily, and they're dispersed easily. Now we do capture that, and we track what comes off the zeolite, which to me was really fascinating. When we first started doing this, we captured a bunch of volatile organic compounds, sent it out to a lab for analysis, and there was some stuff that came back as just a peak that we couldn't identify. So we sent out for further analysis, and it came back as diesel fuel exhaust, which I was fascinated by, because that means that even the equipment that's mining the zeolite is creating toxins that are being sucked up by the zeolite. So when people tell me that there was a product in Australia, Zeoactive 8 with the number 8, and they said that they don't need to micronize and activate their zeolite because they're in Australia, which is a pristine environment, and their zeolite is pristine, right? So first of all, I found that where they're mining the zeolite, there was a nickel mine, a copper mine, there were a bunch of mines that were right around that. So you know there was a lot of heavy metals there. But I also pointed out the fact that even the equipment that's mining the zeolite is creating exhaust, which is being sucked up by the zeolite. So even the mining process is adding toxins to zeolite that need to be cleaned out. So like I said, my process starts with heat, and then we have a process of cation exchange. We add weak acids with the heat that actually increases cation exchange to the zeolite to pull the heavy metals out quickly. When the heavy metals get pulled out, they oxidize quickly and become oxides. And if you see some of the pictures I had in my slideshow, you'll see that almost looks like dirt floating on top. Those are the oxides of heavy metals, which we simply remove from solution over and over and over again. And so this process, I mean, there's a lot of art that went into it with the science. Over time, we perfected it to specifically make sure that we remove not only the heavy metals, but for example, iron. You know, we had a batch of product we made in 2007 that turned brown, and all these people were upset because they had brown product. And we tested, there was nothing wrong with it. Everything was fine. It winds up that it had a little bit of iron in it. Okay. I mean, micrograms of iron, certainly not enough to be of any concern to anyone that's concerned about iron, but it was enough that the iron oxidized. Oh, I see a baby. Okay. It oxidized enough that it turned brown in solution. It was basically rusting in the product. And so we added another step to remove iron from it to make sure that there was no iron left in the product. So that was tweaked over time. But that is basically the process that we use to activate the zeolite, to make sure that by the time you get the product, the only thing left in there is purified, active, micronized zeolite without any of the heavy metals or toxins. And of course, every batch is tested for toxins and heavy metals to make sure that there's nothing in there.
Somebody says, so dialysis patients would not be able to use daily detox? I guess it has something to do with the water you were talking about.
No, yeah, the problem is dialysis patients are limited in the amount of water they can drink, so that becomes a difficulty. The zeolite is easily dialyzed, so it can be removed from in dialysis. I just recommend if you're on dialysis, you can't take 10 drops 3 times a day, maybe 2 or 3 drops, 3 or 4 times a day. You just take a lower dose because you can't get enough water to really maximize the benefit, but you certainly can use it.
When you are in a fat burn, is there any issues using Detox Plus?
Well, there aren't a lot of fat burners left. I mean, they outlawed Ma Wong, ephedra. So I guess people are using synephrine or they're using yerba mate or something like that. But yeah, there's no contraindications between the zeolite and the fat burner. Fat burners, for the most part, also those products tend to have a diuretic with them, like dandelion or something like that. So you're going to lose more water. So just make sure you're drinking plenty of water.
If someone, I don't know if you could interpret this question. If someone has immunotherapy and it attacked their good cells instead of cancer, will daily detox help?
Well, listen, my blanket thing is that in 99.9999% of cases, the daily detox is going to help no matter what. So it's going to be beneficial. I said it might help and it's not going to hurt. It can't hurt you. So you might as well try it. Now that's a really special case. I wonder, because immunotherapy by definition is targeted at the cancer cells. So it shouldn't attack healthy tissue. So I'd be really curious as to who's doing it and how that happened, but it's got nothing to do with the Daily Detox Plus. The Daily Detox Plus is certainly going to help clean out the body, and a cleaner, healthier body fixes itself.
This is like the last question, and then I'll open it up for Christy and Kyle to see if they have any. I have someone who had to quit taking it because it was causing her to have pressure on her bladder to urinate 3 times an hour. Can that truly happen?
Listen, you're gonna go to the bathroom, especially if you're drinking plenty of water and not getting electrolytes. If you add some electrolytes, that'll take some pressure off. In fact, if you know the history of Gatorade, the reason Gatorade was so popular is because the Florida Gators football team were drinking it and they weren't sweating and having to go to the bathroom. They were holding on to their fluid, and so they could play a whole game and be much more alert. And so I think they won a national championship the year Gatorade came out. The fact is you need your electrolytes. The other thing too is what can artificially put pressure on the bladder could be things like a yeast infection or a bladder infection or UTI. And so if she has that as well, then that's getting mad because you're raising the pH of the body and you're making an inhospitable environment for that infection. So that could be happening as well. But my recommendation for something like that would be certainly make sure she gets her electrolytes, drinks plenty of water, and keeps taking it, because it's probably a sign that it's working.
Okay, Christy?
Yeah, the only thing that, and Rick, I think you addressed this just a little bit, but the number one thing I get asked is what makes this better than this product or XYZ product. And again, I don't ever want to bash anyone else's thing, but I see a lot of literature out there like, oh, ours is such and such micro, like all of these things. So can you just maybe help in a generalized blanket statement as people are growing their business, talking about what makes ours the thing? And I don't know how else to explain that, but people will.
I got it.
All right.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. So I invented the terms micronized and activated. No one ever talked about that before, and everyone's kind of stolen that.
Mm-hmm.
And, they say imitation is the finest form of flattery. I'm not flattered because these are bad products. There's a lot of bad products out there. In fact, Neil remembers the very first product that was competitive to mine was by a company called Denali. And Denali, I don't even know if they're still in business, but they were an MLM, and they launched a product called Denali Tox. And they kept telling people how much better it was than my product. And they used all my same marketing, but said it's better. It's more micronized. It's more activated, and it was just marketing. And I had looked at the product and I wasn't impressed. And I didn't even want to talk about it because I felt like talking about it would elevate them. So my saying is you don't have to swing at every pitch. If you have a low-level competitor, don't even talk about it because you're just elevating them in the conversation. But in this case, when Denali Tox actually came out, the first thing that people reported is it turned your teeth green when you took it, which I thought was a negative. I don't think anybody wants green teeth. And the second thing is because they used unfiltered humic and fulvic acid, that had bacteria in it and fungus in it. It actually put several people in the hospital with aflatoxicosis, with liver failure. And so that product was pulled off the market. The president of the company was fired. So that was like the first competitor that tried to do what we do, that didn't understand the concept. So most of the others, there's a lot of companies out there that say their product is good because it's clear. So clear drops and things like that. Well, it's clear probably because there's nothing in it. You know, like one product says that they have 250 micrograms of zeolite per dose. Well, what are you going to do with 250 micrograms of the zeolite? How much toxin is that going to pull in? You know, I've actually taken that product, I've centrifuged it overnight, which should have even isolated the couple of milligrams that should be in a bottle, and there's nothing in it. I can't find anything in it. Okay, so that's the first thing. There's another company that says that they use a manufactured clinoptilolite. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Clinoptilolite is a natural product. It's found in abundance. The mine site we get it from has 300 million tons of clinoptilolite in that mine site. So we've got enough. You guys can sell plenty. I've got enough of the raw material. So it makes no sense to manufacture clinoptilolite. And even if you did so, synthetic zeolites are used in the oil and gas industry. They're not legal for human consumption. So if they truly are making a synthetic zeolite, it's an illegal product that they're marketing. Okay. The other thing they say, and this is hilarious to me, is they say, I talk about our particle size. So our average particle size is submicron. Our lowest particle size is about 0.49 nanometers. Okay. So about a little less than half a micron. It's 0.49 microns. I'm sorry, a little less than half a micron. So they're saying that their product is 0.9 nanometers. It's so small. And I'm thinking some marketing guy said, what's the lowest number I can come up with that people might believe and make us sound like we know what we're talking about? It's nice and simple. If you look at a zeolite cage and you look at the holes, the pores of the cage, the holes are uniform. There's 8-sided and 10-sided rings that alternate in the zeolite cage. And the size of those rings is about 0.9 nanometers. Okay. So they're saying their zeolite cages are the size of one of the holes in the zeolite, which makes absolutely no sense. It means that they don't have a full zeolite cage that has space inside that can absorb and trap toxins. And it's not big enough to have charge differentiation to pull those toxins in. So if you understand the science of the zeolite, their marketing makes absolutely no sense. So that particular zeolite, I can say the name because TRS zeolite that I've never heard of until I launched Daily Detox Plus, but apparently they've been a big marketing push. If you look at their website, they use my research, my marketing material to sell their product, and then say it's better because it's synthetic and it's 0.9 nanometers. And I just said neither of those things make any sense. So meanwhile, our product is, I've been making it since 2005. It's the subject of 15 clinical studies, 3 of which we publish in a peer-reviewed journal. We know it's safe. We have tens of thousands of testimonials. We have millions of bottles sold in the last 15 years. So we know this product is safe, effective, and is made with solid science.
Thank you. I wasn't going to say the name, but I get that one a lot too. So
yeah.
I have nothing to add. I don't know if Kyle does. I think you've addressed everything. Thank you so much. I'd like to know if there's anyone with, I don't know what that CLL is.
Oh yeah, someone said here too. Someone says our product is inferior because we have to shake it. Okay, so I want to talk about that really quickly. So we do micronize the zeolite. It goes in solution. The fact that you can see it is a big plus. You can see there's something in it. You don't really have to shake it because of the micronized nature. It's a colloidal suspension. The second you turn it upside down or even touch it, you see how it puffs up into solution? That tells you how super fine the particles are. If you really had to shake it, like some other products, that tells you that it's a heavier particle. It really needs to be shaken to try and keep in solution. The other thing people do is they add humic and fulvic acid, which are highly charged particles, to try to surround the zeolite and keep it in solution. So that's a trick to try and keep it in solution. The only thing I can say about their clear product is we might not need to shake ours, or we need to put ours in, make sure ours is in solution to use it, but they're clear because there's nothing in it. So what am I paying for if there's nothing in the product? All right. I'll say one more. There was a product called Z Natural, which we did we actually were in a lawsuit with the producers of that product, and we got to examine their laboratory, and we tested the water in their laboratory, and their bottles of soluble zeolite tested exactly the same as the tap water in their laboratory, the DI water. Now, I'm not saying that they were cheating. I'm not saying that they were simply bottling tap water, but I think what they did is they made their whole zeolite product, and they ran it through a 0.2 micron filter because they wanted to get smaller particles, and they filtered out all the zeolite. So you all they wound up with was the tap water they started with, you know? So that's the sort of competitors are out there. Certainly they don't understand the science behind the product.
Thank you so much. Another thing, guys, if you come up with questions later, and maybe I'm opening up a can of worms here, but Rick is usually really good. I know I send Kyle stuff all the time, like, hey, what about this? And what about that? And, we'll send Rick an email, and he's always very good with responding back. So, and there are some other videos out there, which I would encourage everyone to get back with, someone that's been here a little longer than you and knows where to find those, and we can get you that information as well. The clinical papers, like Rick was talking about, I believe they should be in everyone's back office. And that's the biggest thing for me, is I don't like trying to convince anyone of anything, because we really don't have to do that here. Like, we have the science, we have the proof, and just showing, educating other people is really how I personally have grown. So really quick, does it help with diabetes? That was a question. Last one, does it help with diabetes?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So, and I've talked about this at length. So early on, we had diabetics that said that they were better controlling their blood sugar levels, their HbA1c came down. One guy, even tell the story, went on stage and said, I was blind and now I can see. And everyone freaked out, like we're laying on hands. But the guy had early stage diabetic retinopathy, which is the leading cause of adult blindness in the United States. And his diabetes got better under control, and his retinopathy reversed, which can happen in early stages. So we needed to look into this. Why is this helping so much in diabetics? So understand, the problem with diabetes is not that you have high blood sugar, it's that the sugar starts to attach to things, okay? So you have high blood sugar, and when the sugar decides there's so much of it, it's gonna grab onto things. So if it attaches to nerves, for example, it's glycolysis of the nerves or glycation of the nerves, it causes neuropathy. So damage to the nerves. If it binds to the walls of blood vessels, it causes claudications, narrowing of the blood vessels, which can lead to loss of circulation and eventually amputation, necrosis amputation of limbs. If it binds to the back of the eye, the retina, it causes diabetic retinopathy. So it's about the blood sugar having the ability to start to attach to things, okay? So the cool thing about the zeolite and the glucose has what they call dipole moment. It has a positive charge on one side of the molecule. And so I imagine what's happening is what we call, and the same thing, very similar to what I talked to about protons and acid, is that the zeolite is basically grabbing onto the glucose and dragging it around the body and keeping it in circulation. Okay, so it's preventing it from attaching to things, thereby limiting the side effects of the diabetes, because the glucose doesn't have a chance to attach to things. So by keeping it in circulation, you have a longer time to use your sugar and for your drugs to work. And so you wind up having lower HbA1c over time, better control of your diabetes, and less side effects. So it's a very simple mechanism, but it's kind of a cool side effect of the zeolite.
I love that. I love that. All right. Thank you so much. And this will be uploaded to SoundCloud like all of the other videos. And I think that is all we have for today. Thank you very much, Rick. Neil, do you have anything to add? Nothing? All right.
Nope. Thanks, Rick. We did not stump Rick today, so we have to try again.
Okay.
I'd like to see that happen. I'm happy to see it. Remember, Trade Talks will be tomorrow night, and I'm sure there'll be lots of great updates, and we will see everyone then. Thanks again, Rick. Bye, guys.
Thank you.